What if I told you that the most terrifying army in Middle-earth wasn't defeated, it was recruited? Every creature of shadow serving Morgoth was once something else, something pure. Picture this: you're not looking at random monsters. You're looking at a military-industrial complex that operated for thousands of years, with a clear chain of command, specialized units, and a recruitment strategy so effective it turned angels into demons and elves into orcs. Today, we're ranking every servant of Morgoth by their true power, revealing the dark hierarchy that nearly conquered Middle-earth. We'll uncover secrets that even hardcore Tolkien fans miss, including psychological profiles that explain why each servant was perfectly designed for their role in Morgoth's war machine. And here's something that will blow your mind. Morgoth's greatest weakness wasn't his pride. It was that he created servants too powerful for him to fully control. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the Dark Lord's own creations became the seeds of his downfall. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the most comprehensive breakdown of Middle-earth's dark hierarchy ever assembled. Here's Morgoth's cruelest joke. He didn't just create orcs to be his soldiers, he made sure they remembered what they used to be. In the deepest pits of Utumno, Morgoth took the fairest of the Eldar and broke them. Not just their bodies, but their souls. As Tolkien wrote in the Silmarillion, all those of the Quendi who came into the hands of Melkor were put there in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved, and thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the Orcs in envy and mockery of the Elves. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. Every Orc carries the genetic memory of their tortured ancestors. That's why they hate elves with such personal fury. It's not just racism, it's ancestral trauma encoded in their DNA. They look at elves and see what they were robbed of becoming. Morgoth's genius was creating soldiers who were self-motivating. Orcs didn't need constant supervision because their hatred was hardwired. Their very existence was an act of revenge against everything beautiful in Middle-earth. They were the perfect infantry, expendable, numerous, and fueled by an inexhaustible rage. Their strength wasn't individual prowess. It was in their overwhelming numbers and their complete inability to feel mercy. When Morgoth unleashed orc armies, he wasn't just sending soldiers, he was sending living embodiments of corruption itself. But even Morgoth knew that raw numbers weren't enough for every tactical situation. Trolls. The living siege weapons trolls weren't just strong, they were Morgoth's answer to the greatest fortifications in Middle-earth. When you're planning to assault Gondolin or break the gates of Angban's enemies, you need something more sophisticated than angry elves with weapons. Morgoth created multiple troll variants for specific military purposes. Hill trolls for open battlefield combat, cave trolls for underground warfare, mountain trolls for siege operations. Each type was engineered for maximum effectiveness in their environment. Here's what's brilliant about troll psychology. They were just intelligent enough to follow complex orders, but too dim to question them. Perfect soldiers in that regard. Their weakness to sunlight wasn't a design flaw, it was crowd control. Morgoth needed servants who couldn't operate independently during daylight hours. The most telling moment comes during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, when Hurin faced Gothmog's troll bodyguard. These weren't random monsters, they were elite units protecting a Balrog lord. But Hurin killed them all single-handedly, showcasing both their strength and their critical limitation. They could be outmaneuvered by superior tactics and heroic willpower. Trolls represented Morgoth's philosophy perfectly. Overwhelming physical power applied without mercy or hesitation. They were living battering rams, designed to break both stone walls and enemy morale. But raw strength could break walls. For the more subtle work of war, Morgoth needed soldiers who could think. Werewolves, the perfect infiltrators. Here's something that will change how you see werewolves forever. Sauron's shape-shifting abilities weren't unique. He learned them from his werewolf units. These weren't the werewolves of modern mythology. Tolkien's werewolves were permanently in wolf form, but with human-level intelligence. They could speak, plan, negotiate, and most importantly, they could lie. They were Morgoth's special forces, capable of infiltration, reconnaissance, and psychological warfare. Draugluin was their progenitor, but Carcharoth was their masterpiece. Bred specifically to counter Huan, the greatest hound in Middle-earth, Carcharoth represented targeted biological warfare. Morgoth didn't just create a bigger wolf, he created a wolf designed to kill one specific enemy. The form of werewolves was actually fashioned by Sauron himself, who took wolf shape during his time on Tol Sirion. This tells us something crucial. Werewolves weren't just random creatures. They were proof of concept for Sauron's later shape-shifting abilities. He was experimenting with biological transformation that would later make him the master deceiver. During the quest for the Silmaril, Sauron used werewolves for psychological torture, sending them to devour prisoners one by one. This wasn't just execution, it was terror tactics designed to break the will of captives. Werewolves could communicate, which meant they could taunt, threaten, and psychologically manipulate their victims before killing them. By the Third Age, werewolves remained among Sauron's servants, proving their effectiveness across millennia. They represent the evolution from Morgoth's blunt instruments to more sophisticated weapons of war. But even perfect predators pale next to creatures of pure shadow. Vampires. The information network. Thuringwethil wasn't just a messenger. She was Morgoth's NSA. Think about what vampires could do that no other servant could. They could fly, move unseen through darkness, and most importantly, they could gather intelligence across vast distances. In an age before magical communication, vampires were Morgoth's internet. Thuringwethil, whose name means woman of secret shadow, represents something terrifying: organized surveillance. She didn't just carry messages, she was Sauron's herald, meaning she had authority to speak for him. This suggests vampires weren't just scouts. They were trusted with diplomatic and strategic responsibilities. When Luthien disguised herself as Thuringwethil to infiltrate Angband, she chose the perfect cover. Vampires had clearance to move freely through Morgoth's domain. They were his eyes and ears, reporting on everything from troop movements to the loyalty of his other servants. The bat-like form with barbed claws wasn't just for intimidation, it was perfectly designed for their role. They could perch unseen, move silently, and when necessary, deliver death from above. They were living drones, millennia before the concept existed. Intelligence gathering required cunning, but total war demanded something else entirely. Balrogs, the fallen angels. Every Balrog chose evil, and that makes them infinitely more terrifying than mindless monsters. These weren't corrupted creatures or twisted animals. Balrogs were Maiar, divine spirits who served the Valar in the beginning of time. They saw the beauty of Valinor, knew the music of creation, and still chose to follow Morgoth into darkness. That's not corruption, that's apostasy. Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs, embodies this perfectly. He wasn't just Morgoth's enforcer, he was his high captain, commanding armies and making strategic decisions. When Gothmog killed Feanor, the greatest of the Noldor, it wasn't just a battle casualty. It was divine judgment perverted into murder. Here's what makes Balrogs unique in Morgoth's hierarchy. They retained their divine nature while choosing evil. They had the power of angels combined with the malice of demons. Their flames weren't just fire, they were corrupted divine light. Their shadows weren't just darkness, they were the absence of holiness. The Battle of Unnumbered Tears shows their true role. They were field commanders. Gothmog didn't just fight, he coordinated Morgoth's entire military strategy. Balrogs were generals who happened to be walking apocalypses. When the Valar finally came to overthrow Morgoth, most Balrogs were destroyed, but some fled deep into the earth. Durin's Bane, sleeping in Moria for thousands of years, proves something chilling. These beings are essentially immortal, They don't age, don't die naturally, and never forget their hatred. Gandalf's battle with Durin's Bane wasn't just wizard versus demon, it was divine judgment finally catching up to apostasy. The fact that it required Gandalf's death and resurrection to defeat one Balrog shows their true power level. But even fallen angels served someone else's vision. Sauron, the ambitious lieutenant. Here's Sauron's greatest deception. It wasn't the One Ring. It was convincing Morgoth he was loyal. Originally named Mairon, meaning the Admirable, Sauron was a Maiar of Ol the Smith, drawn to order and craftsmanship. But when he joined Morgoth, he brought something unique: administrative genius combined with divine power. While other servants were weapons, Sauron was Morgoth's CEO. Look at the evidence of Sauron's early independence. He established his own base of operations on Tol Sirion. He created his own servant species, the Werewolves. He developed his own interrogation techniques and psychological warfare methods. Most telling, he shapeshifted freely, something Morgoth never demonstrated. During the First Age, while Morgoth was focused on direct military confrontation, Sauron was building infrastructure. He wasn't just following orders, he was creating his own power base within Morgoth's empire. Every innovation, from the creation of werewolves to the corruption of Numenor, shows Sauron thinking beyond his master's immediate goals. The most revealing moment comes after Morgoth's defeat. While other servants were destroyed or fled, Sauron immediately began working to restore his master's legacy. But was he really serving Morgoth's vision, or his own improved version of it? The One Ring represents Sauron's ultimate evolution beyond his master. Morgoth ruled through fear and brute force. Sauron created a system of control that was elegant, efficient, and theoretically eternal. He didn't just continue Morgoth's work, he perfected it. As the Silmarillion notes, Sauron had a part in all the deeds of Melkor the Morgoth upon Arda, and was only less evil than his master in that for long he served another and not himself. That phrase, for long, is crucial. It implies his service had an expiration date. Yet even Sauron feared Morgoth's ultimate weapons. Dragons, the living weapons of mass destruction. Dragons weren't just powerful, they were Morgoth's attempt to create artificial valor. Think about the escalation from Glaurung to Ancalagon the Black. Glaurung was already capable of laying waste to entire kingdoms, manipulating the minds of heroes, and single-handedly changing the course of wars. But he was just the prototype. Ancalagon was so massive that when he fell, he destroyed the towers of Thangorodrim, mountains that had stood for millennia. Here's what makes dragons terrifying beyond their physical power. They retained intelligence. Glaurung didn't just burn things, he psychologically tortured his victims. He understood cruelty as an art form. When he cursed Turin and Nienor, he wasn't just being malicious. He was engineering specific tragic outcomes because he found it entertaining. Dragons represent something unique in Tolkien's world, creatures powerful enough to threaten the Valar themselves. When Eärendil fought Ancalagon, it required divine intervention and the greatest eagles to achieve victory. This wasn't just a battle, it was cosmic warfare. But here's the crucial detail. Dragons were loyal to Morgoth, not through corruption or fear, but through respect for power. They served him because he created them to be apex predators, and they recognized him as the ultimate apex predator. It was a partnership of mutual destruction. The intelligence of dragons also meant they were capable of independent thought and long-term planning. Smaug, centuries later, demonstrated this by establishing his own kingdom in Erebor. Dragons didn't just follow orders. They understood strategy and could adapt to changing circumstances. Yet even dragons couldn't match the hunger of the void itself. Ungoliant, the primordial terror. Ungoliant didn't serve Morgoth. She made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Here's what makes Ungoliant unique among all of Morgoth's associates. She predated him. While Morgoth was corrupting the music of creation, Ungoliant was already lurking in the void outside reality. She wasn't created or corrupted. She was primordial darkness given form. When Morgoth approached her to destroy the two trees, it wasn't recruitment. It was a business transaction. Ungoliant wanted to devour light itself, and Morgoth needed someone powerful enough to threaten the valor in their own realm. They were partners in apocalypse. The destruction of the two trees represents something unprecedented, the successful assault on divinity itself. Ungoliant didn't just steal light, she consumed it, turning the very essence of creation into darkness. This was cosmic horror on a scale that Tolkien rarely approached. But here's where the partnership broke down. Ungoliant's hunger was literally infinite. When she demanded the Silmarils as payment, Morgoth realized he'd made a deal with something beyond his control. The fact that she nearly killed him, the Dark Lord himself, before the Balrogs intervened, shows her true power level. Ungoliant represents something that even Morgoth feared: entropy itself. While he sought to corrupt and control creation, she simply wanted to consume it entirely. She was the heat death of the universe given form and consciousness. Her ultimate fate remains unknown, but the implication is terrifying. She may still be out there, in the void beyond the world, growing stronger and hungrier with each passing age. She represents the one force that even the Valor cannot fully comprehend or control. So what have we learned about Morgoth's hierarchy of evil? Each servant represents a different aspect of corruption, perfectly designed for specific roles. Orcs embody bitter revenge. Trolls represent mindless destruction. Werewolves showcase intelligent predation. Vampires demonstrate organized surveillance. Balrogs exemplify divine corruption. Sauron represents ambitious administration. Dragons embody apocalyptic power. And Ungoliant represents primordial hunger. But here's the irony that Tolkien embedded in this hierarchy. Morgoth's greatest creations ultimately led to his downfall. Sauron's ambition meant he was already planning his own empire. Dragons were too powerful to remain loyal indefinitely. Even Ungoliant nearly destroyed him when their interests diverged. Morgoth's fundamental mistake wasn't his cruelty or his pride. It was creating servants who were, in their own ways, superior to him. He gave Sauron administrative genius he himself lacked. He created dragons more purely destructive than he could ever be. He allied with Ungoliant, who represented forces beyond his comprehension. The fall of Morgoth wasn't just a military defeat. It was the inevitable result of a management structure where the CEO was less capable than his department heads. His servants didn't just serve him, they surpassed him. Which brings us to the ultimate question. If you had to face one of these servants in single combat, which would you choose? The corrupted orc with its ancestral fury, the cunning werewolf with its predatory intelligence, the fallen angel with its divine power, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments which of Morgoth's servants you find most terrifying and why. And if you want more deep dives into the darkest corners of Middle-earth's mythology, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're just getting started exploring the secrets that even Tolkien scholars debate. Because in the end, understanding evil isn't about glorifying it. It's about recognizing it when it appears in new forms. And if there's one thing Morgoth's servants teach us, it's that corruption comes in many shapes, but it always starts with a choice.